Welcome, everyone, to the Cardano Effect Podcast, episode 81. The purpose of this podcast is to take high-level developer information and projects that are occurring within the Cardano space and break them down into bite-sized, consumable pieces of information for everyday use. I'm your host, Philippe, and let's get this podcast started. The hosts of the Cardano Effect Podcast today are Rick and myself, as usual. We want to thank everyone for tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe, share this video. We look forward to bringing you new and engaging content week by week. So we have another one of our special episodes, and Rick is going to be introducing our special guest very soon. Just would like to give the disclaimer. None of what we say on this podcast is financial advice. Remember, you are your best financial advisor. And if you don't think you are, you need to find someone who's qualified to do so. So without further ado, how are you doing today, Rick? How's this evening treating you? What's going on? What's happening?
Hey, doing great, Philippe. Thanks for asking. The evening's going well, and we have a lot of people here today. I would like to give a shout out to the Cardano Foundation for sponsoring this podcast. Thank you very much for sponsoring. I would also like to remind all new viewers this podcast is available on all audio streaming platforms such as Google Play and Apple Music. We have many guests tonight, stake pool operators. This evening we have Nick, Phillip, Bryan, JT, Sonny, and Shawn with us, here to answer community questions off of Reddit and some other questions that came up during the course of operating stake pools. We'll get talking about that. And our first guest I'll start with tonight is Nick. And so, Nick, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your stake pool? How's it going, Nick?
Doing great. Thanks, Rick, for having me on the podcast. Just started the Tectonic stake pool after jumping into the Cardano community in late 2019 and kind of using it as a foundation to learn about Cardano and use it as a central location for my friends, family, and others in Wyoming that are interested in blockchain and cryptocurrency.
All right. Well, thank you for that introduction. And next we have Phillip, Bryan, and JT, all from WSP1 Stake Pool. So who wants to lead us off? Phillip, you want to lead us off, or how you guys want to do it?
Yes, I'll go first. So I'm Phillip, and I got these two gentlemen on this thing early this year. And we do this because we want to see the Cardano system grow. We want to just grow our stake pool, try to get as many delegators as possible. We know it's really hard to start off in the beginning. So that's what we came on the Cardano Effect. And we thank both of you for allowing us to do this. Really appreciate it. And I'll let Bryan take it from here.
Hello, Philippe and Rick. Appreciate everything you're doing. My name is Bryan, and I'm originally from Shelby, North Carolina, and I got into Cardano in 2017, late 2017. Phillip introduced me to Cardano. I really didn't know too much about crypto at the time, but once Phillip showed me the information, I pretty much dived in head first, and ever since then, I've been trying to learn as much as I can about Cardano. We started our stake pool about 2 months ago, and we also, me and Phillip, decided to bring in our friend JT, and so far everything been going well. Ups and downs, but at the end of the day, I'm glad to be a part of this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Also, Bryan and JT, you want to say hi there?
How you doing? I'm JT. I started Cardano when Phillip and Bryan approached me needing someone to run the stake pool. I have a technical background. I work mostly with virtualization and in the healthcare field. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, JT. Bryan, Phillip, I appreciate it. And that's Wagyu Steak Pool. Some of the best beef in the world is Wagyu. We appreciate that, man. And next we have Sonny. Sonny, tell us a little bit about yourself and your steak pool. You look great today. Guys, what do you think?
Hi, thank you.
Oh, sure.
Sonny suit, what's up with that?
Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, well, I found out about Cardano like a lot of people, late 2017, shortly after it came out. Everything going on in crypto kind of pulled me back in to kind of check on my Bitcoin and Ethereum, see how they were doing. I think a lot of people were in that boat back then. I found out about Cardano. I got really excited about it. I started buying the top, and I think I bought every single dip all the way down. So by the time the testnet rolled around, I realized that I had at least enough, testnet ADA to try to run a stake pool. So I thought, hey, why not? And I did that. I got it all set up, and it's been a fantastic experience. It's been a lot of fun. it's just been every day trying to get a little bit better, trying to run things a little bit better, figure out what I could do to improve. And right now the pool is running great, so it's been a really exciting experience.
Awesome. That's good to hear. All right, Shawn, tell us a little bit about yourself and your pool, SQUID.
Yeah. Well, first I'd like to say thanks to Philippe and Rick for really providing a great community resource here. And I've been a developer for 25 years and got into crypto about 5 years ago and was doing some work in fintech and some other projects. And when I found out Cardano, I just was, I loved the founding principles of it and the vision that Charles had. And so I knew that was the project for me, and I've been following it ever since. And then when I decided to start a stake pool when the ITN started, and I've been working with it ever since, and happy to be part of hopefully making the Cardano vision a reality.
Awesome. Thank you, Shawn, and thank you for being on the Cardano Effect. Appreciate it. All right,
Rick, this sounds good. I mean, is this our third or fourth stake pool operator episode?
Fourth.
The fourth.
Yeah.
So anyone who is wanting to delegate, it's a very active process. Daedalus has released series of updates, so has Yodoe. So it's becoming easier and easier for delegators to switch pools, choose exactly who they want to delegate to. And the process is going to become more and more streamlined as we get towards mainnet. And mainnet, it should be a little bit cleaner. It will allow you a more interactive experience. But these are the guys that you need to be looking at. So we're going to include all of their stake pool tickers in the description below. If you really want to support the community, support these third-party pools, you can reach them. We're going to put all your contact information as well, and we will put your stake pool tickers. So make sure that you look for their stake pool tickers and spread the love around.
Yeah. All right. We want to make sure we get your information out there. We'll collect that after the podcast. Thank you, Philippe. So let's get on to the main question here. The testnet has been running for 3.5 months. Most of you have been running pools on the testnet for some period of time, at least 2 months, some of you 3 months or longer. And how would you compare the current state of the testnet today compared to when you first started? You could talk about the technology and your own skills as well. What do you guys think about the current state of the testnet? How's it going?
Dramatic improvement. I mean, I was one of the launch pools when the ITN first started, and just spent hours getting ready for that initial launch, and network stability, all of that has just changed dramatically. Right now, it's almost a no-brainer to operate a pool. Really, most of the kinks have been worked out. So.
Yeah, I've seen significant improvement too. Go ahead.
I was going to say, for those first few days, I think there were a lot of us who gave up a lot of sleep to keep things running. But it's way better now. The things are running a lot smoother.
Yeah, I had no sleep December. 8.5 was my nemesis.
That's a good way of describing it. No sleep December. It was like that for everyone. All right. Thanks for that info. So Wagyu Stake Pool, tell us about your experience. How was it when you first started and where we at today?
Well, I started the stake pool. I started it up on 8.8. So all the lovely issues that it was having. Me all but pulling my hair out trying to figure out what was going on and trying to get help from the community and everything, which the community was great. They helped me out. They did everything they could. The update came around to 8.9 and it fixed a lot of my issues. And from there, it's just been going up and up. So from 8.8 to, what is it, 8.14, 15 we're on?
Yeah, 8.16.
Yes.
16?
Yeah, I think it's about 16.
Gotcha. It's been phenomenal.
Yeah. Did you ever try the 8.9 Michael Fazio build, the custom modified? It worked well.
No, I didn't, but I wish I would have known about that.
Oh my gosh, dude, it was freaking amazing. I was addicted to it. Sonny, did you use it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I came in on 8.6 because I was on a Ledger, so I had to wait until Ledger had support for the testnet. So I came in kind of in the middle. So my first version was 8.6, and it was pretty stable. I think that a lot of the earlier problems had been worked out by that point, so I was kind of lucky in that regard. And then I spent a lot of time on 8.9 stable alpha 6. Yeah, that was a big when I switched to that, and then also running redundant nodes and using a failover script, the performance on my pool just skyrocketed. But the 8.9 stable alpha 6, that was a great release. And I'm actually using 8.14 stable alpha 2 now, and it's great. I never have any problems at all.
You know, that was the first release that really brought sanity to the network, in my opinion. And I can't thank Michael Fazio enough. I think he just really knocked it out of the park for us, and his current contributions have really helped as well in the current builds. So he's been doing a lot of communication with the IOHK dev team as well. So
yeah,
that's what I like about this community. I think it's probably one of the best, if not the best, community in the crypto space.
Absolutely. You know, that could be a good question to talk about, whether or not it's a good idea to run on a community build or the official IOHK version. Like, should I be on 8.14 stable alpha 2? Is that fine? Or should I be on 8.16? Is that better?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I just rolled back from 8.16 to 8.14 to 14 stable alpha 2 today.
Wow. Yeah, I've loved it.
For testing. So what do you guys think? Community builds, that's a good question to bring up. You have 14 alpha 2 Michael Fazio community build. They call it stable. It gives you the ability to connect peering, where you can say that peer is preferred, and that allows you to build networks, which also leads us to the to another question we had from one of our Redditors, right? So let's first look at community builds. Let's say developer creates a high performance build that outperforms the baseline. Do you think it's okay to use or not? What do you guys think? It's a good question, Sonny.
Well, personally, I'll go ahead and put out my opinion. I think that it's great. You know, whatever is best, run the best version available. That's it. That's best for, I consider, you know, as a stake pool operator, I feel like I have a moral obligation to the people who delegate to my pool to do whatever I can to make the most blocks that I can. So if I can run a more stable version that's going to help me make even one more block, then I feel like I have to do that. And the IOHK developers, they can look at that code under the hood and figure out what Mr. Fazio did different, you know. And my opinion is they can learn that way, not from me running 8.16 and then having problems and telling them about it. Like, I'll run the better version, make more blocks, and let them worry about, you know, the development side.
I'd agree with that completely. You know, as long as it's not causing issues on the network, just destabilizing it, you know. Obviously, if it's a better build, that's what we should be running, especially in a testnet scenario, in my opinion. You know, once we're in the production Haskell node version of this, I think that those community builds will be a little harder to come by, but we'll see what the future brings.
Well, I think community builds are very good, but here's what I have to say about that. I rather use the official IOHK model before I go to community builds. Just my personal opinion, since they're the ones who are developing the product. That's how I feel about this situation.
Yeah, and for me, I've been using the IOHK builds the entire time. But I think as long as the community builds are open source and with the goal of bringing the best together, then we can, if we have a mix of operators who are using both, then we can actually improve the overall product.
Yes, I think that's what it's all about, what Cardano is about bringing ideas together.
Yeah, IOHK did roll some Michael Fazio code into the baseline.
It sounds like they need to add Michael Fazio to the team, and then, you know.
That's what I was going to say. They need to just go ahead and bring him on salary and just.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, like what Sonny referred to earlier, so Michael built 8.14 stable alpha 2, 0.89 stable alpha 6, 2 extremely solid builds. You got Andrew Westberg from Blue Cheese Steakhouse. He built Your Manager. So it's kind of like if you set up Your Manager and one of those builds, you can sleep well at night.
Yep.
Let them blocks roll, man. Let them roll in. And I agree with Sonny on whatever build makes the most blocks.
I'm not sure Michael's Haskell enthusiast, so he might have to, find another part of the project.
Yeah.
Yep. So you might not see the tuner versions of the software code during Haskell.
Okay, so what has been the most satisfying thing about running a pool? So I know you've had your triumphs and your setbacks, but what has been that aha moment where you're like, oh, I'm so glad that I'm running a pool. I'm so glad I'm contributing. What's that moment for each and every one of you?
I think for me, just building blocks. I mean, that's the part that really makes me feel productive as part of that. I mean, outside of the technical contributions and helping the community is, each one of those blocks, just puts a smile on my face. So, and especially in the beginning, they were definitely hard won. Outside of that, just, providing a good return on stake for all the stakers that I've had in the past. So.
So us personally, I think that the most rewarding part is the same thing as what Nick said, getting these blocks, because when we get blocks, our delegators are happy and we're happy too. So that's very important to us, making sure our delegators are paid well.
Okay. Yeah, I think having that, and one thing for me, has been the communication I've gotten back from delegators who have appreciated the work that goes into it, and ask questions, and just sort of creating a community within the delegators to my pool.
Well, for me personally, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, for me personally, I'm not, really technical, but what made everything so satisfying is the fact that me, Phillip, and JT could come together and start this stake pool, because me and Phillip, we were just thinking about just delegating, just going up about our business. But I started thinking about, like, you know what, let's at least try. So
there you go. And nice YouTube video, by the way, that you guys made. I saw that. That was
great.
Good. I like that.
Which one you're talking about, Rick?
Which one?
You've got like 4 of them or something like that now.
Are you talking about the cartoon?
Oh, the cartoon. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We had to do something
from Bryan.
Yeah, we had to come up with something to get people attention. We had to do something. Me and Phillip was sitting there brainstorming, and I was like, you know what? Let's start with the name Wagyu, because everything from Japan, Wagyu originated from Japan. Cardano started in Japan. So that's when it started from there. And then we were talking about the stake and everything. I was like, you know what? We got to get delegators. So we got to get people attention to our stake pool. So that's when the idea came through, and this went from there.
Yeah.
We're hoping that Adult Swim picks up our show.
I think the most satisfying thing for me in all of this was, as I said before, I was all but pulling out my hair when I first started. But now it's running stably. I can check the node whenever I want, and I haven't had any issues. So it's very nice that, I made this, I constructed this, and it's not blowing up in my face.
Yeah, to kind of build on that, this was a big outside of my comfort zone type thing for me, getting into command line Linux, it's a very traumatic experience. And, I think that just being excited about the stake pool pulled me past it. And I'm just so glad it did. I think that's been one of the most rewarding things, is just learning something that seemed so difficult before. And now I kind of have the hang of it. I can troubleshoot my own problems. I think that's been one of the biggest things. And then also, my perspective is that the guys at IOHK, and the guys and gals at IOHK, they are building a protocol, an amazing protocol, but it's up to us to actually operate the infrastructure that will bring that protocol to life. So to actually be able to successfully operate a piece of that infrastructure is, to me, it's extremely exciting. It's just really exciting thing to be a part of.
Okay. That sounds good. Thanks to all of you for putting in that effort. It takes a lot of work to become a stake pool operator. It's a lot of hours. So I wanted to elaborate. So Phillip, Bryan, and JT, they formed a sort of an alliance and created their own staking pool. So right now in the Cardano community for stake pool operators, there are alliances that are starting to form. What is your opinion about alliances amongst stake pool operators? And are you interested, or would you be interested in the future in joining one?
Yes, it's good to collaborate with other people. I don't see an issue with that whatsoever. I know people could use it for bad, but with anything, there's always good and bad with it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, as long as there isn't any infighting or just, negative in the community because of it, I think it's a good thing.
My perspective is that, stake pool operators don't, I think it's great. I think that them working together is great. It's great for the community as long as they're not like attacking the network, and that unless there's 51% of them and they're trying to attack the network, I mean, that's when it becomes a problem. But when you're talking about like 6 or 8% of the network coming together and all they're even, most of what they're doing is sharing stake between each other to help each other get started, or sharing node information between each other so that everybody has a better connection to the network. I mean, that's just good for the network. I don't see any problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah, especially for newcomers.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, smaller, pools just struggle so much in the beginning, and you need all the allies that you can get, and it just allows you to multiply your resources and try to be competitive against these larger pools that are frankly, well funded and well manned, and it's difficult to compete with those guys. It just is. So, I love that you guys are putting out videos. I think that speaks to the difficulty of trying to bring attention to your pool. And, there have been times when I'm doing as much social media as I can and trying to do as much as I can with my limited time frame. And it's like, feels like you're talking to deaf ears at times. So,
Yeah.
Yes, we had it. Oh, go ahead, Rick.
No, Bryan, this is for you. You go.
Oh, I was just going to add that, when we started, because we came, like Phillip said, we came in the game a little late, but we had to come up with something to get people's attention. So that's the reason why, me and Phillip brainstormed and, just went from there.
So Shawn, you run SQUID Pool. So what's your thoughts on alliances? Are you open to them in the future? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that it can bring some good benefits to the network. So I'm open to it, and I'll be looking at any of those alliances that are, open to people joining and evaluating them at that time.
So I share similar sentiments to all of you about forming stake pool alliances. So I think it's a positive for the Cardano community. So we're going to transition now to pledge amounts. So for all the viewers and listeners of the Cardano Effect, basically when the Shelly mainnet hits, we're going to be running on Haskell. And stake pool operators, all the stake pool operators you see here today and on previous episodes, they're going to have to pledge their ADA amounts to their pool. So it's basically putting your money where your mouth is. And the more ADA that you actually pledge to your pool, the higher chances you're going to have to create blocks and ultimately be competitive. So it's about finding the sweet spot, about delegating to a pool that has a significant amount of pledge that allows you to competitively earn return on stake. So I want to hear from you. I know Rick ran a Twitter poll. He was asking stake pool operators, what do you think a good pledge would be? We heard estimates of between 100 and 500,000 ADA. So what about you? What do you think a significant amount is, or a fair and reasonable amount is, for stake pool operators like yourselves to run a successful pool given this pledge amount?
So I'll go first. So I don't have a set formula for it, but I think a fair amount would be 500,000. That seems pretty reasonable in my opinion. Unmute.
I think for me, it's like, I don't want the value to be too high because I think it will keep people out of being able to run pools that maybe are, especially in countries that are not as wealthy. And for people, for me, I'm gonna, I'd like to see about 100K as a pledge amount.
And you can have multiple people pledging to the pool. So even if you're from a country that isn't as wealthy, potentially they could create their own alliance and share their pledge as well. So that helps alleviate some of that. I mean, I think we probably want to ensure we have as much participation as possible, of course. So yeah, anywhere between 100 and 500 sounds reasonable.
I think another factor that's going to affect this is the price of ADA, because right now 100K is not a huge investment, but 500K at a 50-cent ADA is a much bigger investment.
Yeah, I mean, right now the exact number, if we're doing 100,000, is like 3,333. I'm doing it at 3 cents a Cardano. So I mean, it just all depends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that there's kind of two perspectives on it. It's what does the community want versus what does the protocol want? And I think everybody in the community wants as low of a barrier to entry as possible so that we can have as much participation as possible. But from the protocol's perspective, it just needs security. So it seems like 51% of the supply divided by the K rate should be about what they want for a pledge amount. So that way, 51% of the supply, which is the amount that gives us security, is distributed between the K rate, which is how many stake pools that we want.
I have not heard that math formula. I really like that, although it's kind of up there. What's that put us about 1.5 million? That's about 1.5 million right now.
I think it would be about
1.6 million. No?
15 million on mainnet if we had 30 billion staked.
I mean, ultimately, I think that's going to have to be a variable number in the future, something that's adjusted with the value of ADA. If ADA were to go to $50 in ADA and you needed, 100 to 500,000 of those, that's going to create a significant barrier to entry. And now we're no better than a Bitcoin mining operation or some of the other protocol barriers. So,
speaking on barrier to entry, I mean, Cardano ADA is like 3 cents right now, but think about stake pool operators. Let's say it's 100,000 in order to pledge it to your pool and run a successful pool. But what if ADA goes back to its all-time high? Will we have stake pool operators removing their pledge and ultimately removing their participation from the network? Because at some point you have to assume that some stake pool operators will sell. I mean, the ones that care less about their ADA investment, or it's a smaller portion of their net worth, may stick it out long term. But if the price of ADA goes too high, I think a lot of people are going to pull out some, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
go ahead, Bryan.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that, you have some people in the community that just want to sell, make profit, take profit.
We're going to have that regardless, though, because look, you have this to think about. At the end of the year, American citizens are subject to taxation. So all the stuff that you earn from delegating and from running a pool, you're going to be subject to taxes at the end of the year. So you're going to have to set aside like at least half of your position to just sell back to fiat to pay your taxes. That's just a fact.
You also have to consider that, let's say I want to invest $10,000 or whatever, $30,000 right now to buy enough ADA to really, run a nice stake pool. And then over the course of 3 years, that $30,000 becomes worth, $500,000 or something. I could see the temptation to just go ahead and sell that and move on to maybe another business opportunity or do something different. And then at that point, we're going to have different actors come in and buy that amount at those prices and set up their own pools, So it's going to be interesting. I think Charles has talked about a fluctuating K rate. And I personally think that the K rate and the pledge are going to be should be interlinked. So we might see a fluctuating pledge too.
I don't see that happening because I see people sticking with it long term because given the fact that they're going to have rewards coming to them on a regular basis, they'll see this as a stream of income. I don't see people just selling out for a position and just leaving because I think a lot of people here are going to try to live within the ecosystem.
Well, that's a great point too, because that's a great point because my perspective is, I don't plan to ever sell any ADA. I'm just gonna use it to pay rent one day,
Yeah, just a couple days ago, I just seen one of those crypto ATMs, and then I seen like 4 or 5 in the last 2 days. So they popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
When the Fed's printing unlimited money, people are going to look for something real.
Oh, yeah.
I was just going to say that, Sonny. Go on.
It's so hard to talk about this because we haven't had a chance to experience it. It's just like coming into the ITN. There was a lot of discussion of what our pool fees were going to be. And, my back of the napkin calculations said that I really couldn't justify it for less than 7%. And that's what I set my stake pool fees at. And then over time, we started to get a lot of pools with 1%, et cetera. And of course, they just started pulling in stakers because that's going to give them the best return on stake. So, I'm really looking forward to the Haskell testnet and seeing where that lies. Unfortunately, for me, I was new to Cardano before the snapshot, and I had very little of my own ADA at that point because I just hadn't had time to accumulate it. So I think I was in it for about 20 days before that. So I was pushing as hard as I could.
Congratulations, you got in at a great time.
Yeah. Well, I've been in. I was an early Bitcoin miner, as in first generation back when it was worth nothing, and I look back at that and have to laugh at myself because I threw away all my Bitcoin and all my credentials, and I've had a few sleepless nights over that.
Well, hey, you're getting smarter,
Hey, at first you don't succeed, try again.
Yeah. All right. So there's a couple different chunks that we've talked about here, and one of them is, how much would go into a pledge? We're looking at numbers between 100,000, 500,000, $1 million plus. Right now, if you take the top 1,000 wallets and you count down 1,000, and you were to say K equals 1,000, that wallet has 3 million ADA in it, about 2.9 million ADA. So that median is possibly a pledge number, but Sonny brought up a good point. If you only need 51% of that, you could probably take 51% of that 2.9 if K equals 1,000, but currently K equals 100. Now, what does this weird K number mean? What does this K factor do? Does anyone want to tell me about that? What does it mean? What does it do for us?
I'll take a whack at it. The K rate is it's essentially the protocol, the number of stake pools that the protocol wants there to be. And the way that it enforces that is that, so presently the K rate is 100. So that means that if you have more than your share of the K rate, which would be 1 out of 100, so that would be 1%, then you basically don't get rewarded for all the extra stake in your pool. That's a terrible way to explain it. But it correlates with the saturation limit. So the stake pool, the K rate determines the saturation limit. And if the stake pool has more than their share of the K rate, so I'm one stake pool, so I can have 1 out of the 100, that's the K rate. So if the K rate was 1,000, I could be 1 out of 1,000 of the total ADA being staked. So for make it easy, if it was 10 billion and the K rate's 100, then 100 million would be the saturation point. And any ADA staked past 100 million, our pool doesn't get any rewards for that. So the purpose of the K rate is to incentivize people to delegate to smaller pools.
Excellent. I like that explanation right there. All right. So that improves decentralization. It incentivizes decentralization. All right. Now, what does pledge incentivize? It incentivizes the pool operator to somehow secure the protocol by having this stake applied to the pool. And it's kind of complicated what it does, but it improves, I call it a luck factor. It's not well understood, but the A sub 0 or A sub O, whatever it's called, but it improves that by some amount, which means once they go over the saturation point, they might still get a small amount of reward. So basically, to keep it simple, the more pledge, you can get a slightly more reward that goes above either the saturation point or, but I just call it improves your luck a little bit. Does that sound about right?
Yes, that sounds about right. And Nick was hitting a point earlier when he was talking about when he first came in the game, he set an operator fee of 7%. But there seems to be a race to the bottom if you look at like the 1% pools. So hopefully, I feel like the economic model of the ITN right now is a little skewed. It doesn't really mathematically make sense for stake pool operators other than speculating that the price of ADA will increase over a given period of time. But that's not an economic model. That's just a speculative model. So this saturation point or the addition of a pledge amount to the saturation point, it may provide an additional maybe economic incentive for stake pool operators to continue running their business. So it's going to be very interesting to see whether or not these factors are going to tinker in the favor of operators or delegators.
Yeah.
Well, and it may, ultimately act to balance out the K value. So as another metric, if you're well funded in your pledge, that may give you a better opportunity, even if you aren't in that saturation point or in that peak point, to start getting, the ability to get some slot assignments and build blocks.
Yeah,
I don't know what that ratio is. I'm sure someone out there does.
Hopefully, as the network grows too, and as we start to see Gogan and dApps running things like that, extra services like oracles, there's going to be other opportunities for stake pool operators to get income from the network. Personally, for me, the ITN has been a money-losing proposition, but it's been something that I've wanted to do to support the community and in the hopes that it would become financially viable in the mainnet.
And I haven't heard anything about the Hydra effect as well. I know that in Charles' presentation, he kind of alluded to the fact that, this would be another benefit for stake pool operators. I'm not sure if you get additional slot assignments, how that works, what the incentive is going to be there as well. So I think a lot to be discovered on the business end of this.
You mean on Hydra, there's some possible benefit to the operators, like more rewards? It was hinted at, right? You can't answer
that was my understanding that,
Yes.
Yeah.
The only thing that I could think was that somehow it could be related to the transaction throughput through the node, with the Hydra head.
Yeah. Well, I ain't going to believe nothing until I see it. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
I just got to call it, man. All right. So let's go back to a little bit on rewards, and then we're going to roll through some of the questions about market price, Byron reboot, Haskell nodes coming up. When mainnet? Oh, my God. That's a big question. Who knows when that's going to be, right? So one other thing that I'd run Twitter polls on that Philippe mentioned earlier. I'll give you an example. I started my poll off at 6% at the very beginning. I ran a Twitter poll. And the Twitter polls, I use them as a good data point because you'll get pool operator inputs for what percent should a pool operate at. Now, it should operate at whatever the pool operator can successfully operate. So we try to find out what that number is. So according to Twitter, 3 to 4% is optimal because that has the pool operator input, and you got to have people to operate the pool. And it also has the delegators input because they want the best rate possible. But if you look at which pools have the greatest amount of stake, it's the lowest percent. So the race to the bottom occurred. The race to the bottom won. Okay, so my question is, what's your bottom number? Is anyone willing to put it out there? Or are you okay with 3 or 4% and then just suck it up? Is there a bottom number for you guys? What do you think about what's the lowest percent you would go? How are you going to find that number? You don't have to say what the number is. You're going to say, how do you figure out what that number is? Because some pool operators, I said it a while ago, there will be attrition, and there has been. And some pool operators, it's going to become economically unfeasible. They're going to turn their nodes off and cash in, or they're going to hodl or whatever it is that else they do, right? So what do you guys think? What's your bottom line? What's your bottom number? How do we find that number?
I'll take a stab at this one.
Roger.
So, not including me, Philip, or Brian's time, our cost for doing this is roughly about $70 to $80 a month. At what we have, which is 6%, it doesn't take too long to get up to the 3,000 or so Cardano it would take, but at 4%, it wouldn't be much worse either with getting more delegates. So I think the more people would delegate, the lower it can go, especially depending on the K value and what people are allowed to, go to with the saturation point and all.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. Don't answer it. It's a rhetorical question. What if I said that your time is worth $25 an hour? Now how much a month is it costing you to run a node? Is it $70 a month or is it $700 a month? Just an example, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I
It's a lot more than 70, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
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 It's a lot more than
Go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
And I would say, when we started to see the race of the bottom and, I started to see delegation move, and it's like, man, I just need to get down to that 1%. And that was just that natural effect of just, hey, I need stakers so I can build blocks so that I actually feel like I have a purpose on the network. And so I think that's just a natural feeling. And, I've tossed the idea in my head, and I saw Rick's poll, and I participated in that as well. And, it's like, can you attract enough delegates, especially if you don't have a large exposure for more than 1%? And, there for a while I thought, well, man, I better go to 5%. And then, man, I better go to 3%. And, man, I don't know. Maybe I could squeeze 2%. Honestly, I don't know.
I'm thinking the exact same thing.
My perspective on the whole thing is that, I came into the testnet late. So and when I was delegating, I spent about 2 weeks delegating before I had my pool set up. And personally, I was going on ProleTool, filtering out, things that are out of sync and don't have any stake or are saturated. And then I was sorting by fees. I'm sorry, guys. I was one of those guys out there looking for the low fees, So when I came time to set up my stake pool, I'm like, well, as a customer, what was I looking for? That's what I'm going to try to provide. And if you think about it from an ADA per block perspective, you just got to make blocks. You need to get saturated. Even at a 1% pool, I mean, look at all those, 1%, the 1% guys, all the 1% pools. It's making like 350 ADA off of each of those pools, every day. I mean, a 3 cent ADA, yeah. I mean, you need a whole lot a high percentage for it to be profitable. But from my perspective, everything I'm learning is extremely valuable as well. And also positioning myself to be one of the first pools on the mainnet is also extremely valuable. And so I just want to have a saturated pool that's still here 3 years from now. And everybody's like, oh, well, this pool has been here since day one. So I could stick to that and know that I'm good. And that's the pool I want to be. So, and at that point, I feel like if IOHK achieves what they're trying to achieve, that at 1%, it's going to be an astronomical amount of money. And that 1% is going to be way too high eventually.
And there for a while, they started to introduce a feature in Jormungandr that allowed you to change your pool fee, and then that kind of created a little bit of a stir there as to how that would work. And possibly in the future, we'll have the ability to easily change our pool fees as we need to change with the market. So that could be an option in the future as well.
Yeah, I asked an engineer. They'll put that feature back once the wallets have an alert. So it will alert the delegator that a percent change has occurred. Then they will re-enable that feature. But they want to make sure the delegators are protected from malicious people that will bait you in at 1% and then raise it to 70 or 100% and suck up all the money. So that was a good point.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking one of the things about the fees too that's deceptive is when you have in the earlier days of the ITN, you could have a low fee, but if you weren't performing, you were actually getting a worse return. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that. They would just go to the lowest fee without looking at the returns.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, in my opinion, I think that to a degree, it matters, the percentage. But from what I've been looking at with all the pools, it didn't matter if it was at 1% or 10%. They still had a whole bunch of delegates. So I think the fees, yeah, it matters to a degree, but I think people also look at how much rewards they can get back as well.
In my case, I had one of the traveling delegates that came by with a nice lump sum. And when that occurred, I was knocking it out of the park. I was just building every block, knocking it, just going at 100% and performance. And they decided to move on, which is what they do. And it wasn't long after that, I just had a mass exodus of delegates. And now I'm running around 400,000. And I just haven't been able to recover even after having several epics of essentially perfect performance. So that was one of the things that really frustrated me is that, man, I've got this nailed. I'm getting it done, 100% performance. And, each time I looked at ProleTool, I'm like, okay, that hurt. That hurt a little bit more. Now I'm beyond that one block per epic threshold. And, now I'm just at that point of, when lightning strikes, I'll get a slot assignment. So,
yeah, You want me to give you the brutally honest answer about how people view it? People don't care about your node stats. They don't care if it's 100%. They don't care if you have a cool graph. They really don't. They're going to look at their wallet, and if number big, you're good. Number small, you're bad. It's that simple. Simple.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part, but
it's like you don't get the slots. There's nothing you can do. I mean, there's just nothing you can do.
Yeah. One of my biggest questions, I wasn't a delegator. I actually came in just as a pool stake operator, is if you set your fee down to like 1% to 2%, and then later when you can change it, raise it a little bit. If people would actually stay with you, if people would be like, well, their pool's running great, they're getting blocks all the time, we'll stay with them. I'm wondering if that's going to be in effect.
I think the only loyalty you're going to get is if you're a known entity, you've made some presence in the community, or you've made a connection with the delegators personally, or they have some other reason to delegate to you, like you're donating to charity or a project or something like that. Then you're going to get loyalty. But I think if you raise your fees, people are just going to leave if they don't have some other reason to stick with you.
You know, one of the frustrations that I've had is just, that feeling of being trapped, of not being able to communicate with my stakers. And even though I have a Telegram channel and that, it just feels like I'm locked in a vault trying to get my message out. One of the things that I thought would be nice is if, when they delegate, they're automatically subscribed to a communication channel that allows you to actually have the ability to say, hey, just like when you join a Telegram group, thank you for joining the Titanic stake pool. Please let me know if you have any questions, concerns, etc. So that, there is some line of communication there. So they aren't just like, look at that number. See you later.
I'd like to add one more thing to this. So to all the delegators out there, if you delegate to Wagyu Stake Pool, we're not going to just randomly change our fee structure. We'll make it sure it's very consistent. So if we say we're setting it to like 2% for a particular stake pool, we'll leave it at 2%. We're not going to try to do a hooky dook on you. So just putting that out there for you.
Hooky dook.
I'm glad you pointed that out, Philip, because that's what I would have liked to see myself. People like consistency. That's consistent. That's good. I noticed one thing is that pools that have a special cause or special case don't necessarily succeed. Like if they say, hey, we're charging 8% because we have developers to do X, or we're trying to do something else, 10% for something else. It's not working. It's not working. Special case, special cause, charity. I'm checking out some right now. I'll give you an example. Proof of Africa. I'm looking at it right now on Pool Tool. There's 650K delegated to Proof and 52K delegated to POA.
I thought about starting
right there.
Yeah,
people vote with their money. Sorry, go ahead.
I think with those causes, I think called ProleteR be out. Well, should be out by the end of the year, and people can vote for, I guess, different things that the community want to add to the system. So I'm guessing that people are thinking like, well, they can just, present it to the community and vote for it.
I think part of it too could just be getting the message out, kind of educating that problem, the branding issue. Like if you're looking down on Pool Tool, or you're looking down data list looking for a pool, and you just see Proof of Africa, you might not know what that is. You might not know why it has a higher fee. So, I think that's a big challenge for a lot of the pools that are trying to charge a higher fee and do something with that extra that they bring in, is that people just don't know.
In addition, price and the market value of ADA right now, it's not really conducive to doing outside projects. All the operators here can pretty much agree that the price has been completely decimated. So saying that you're going to be donating to charity at this point, like you're going to be donating pennies. It's not, it doesn't stick with people because the project still has a long way to go. It hasn't released a lot of the things we don't even have smart contracts yet. So there really is no incentive for people to donate to a charity pool, and that may change over time. But the project, I don't think, is just big enough yet.
Yeah, not right now, at least.
It's not, and the features aren't there yet either. But it'll get there because it's all being done in parallel. So I think there's a reasonable probability we'll see a lot of implementation by the end of the year. So do you guys want to go on to the Reddit questions? I was just checking ProleTool real quick to balance my numbers, and I'll give you an example. The 1% pool, 1 PCT, operating at 1%, here's the kind of numbers they're looking at. The amount of ADA staked: 108.4 million, 108.5 million, 111 million, 100 million, 109.4 million, 104 million, 89.7 million, 98.7 million, 103 million. Ooh. I think you guys get the picture. They got over $1 billion. Would people vote with their wallet? They don't care what your cause is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man. I just gonna break it off just like that. I don't care what you're doing. I want my money.
Yeah, that's the only thing they care about.
Operator, right?
Put money in my wallet. That's the only thing they
Y'all
care
in
about.
a shark tank.
Well, honestly, part of that could just be, we live in a time where a lot of people are jaded, and it's hard to trust somebody that they're actually going to do something charitable with your money. And I think a lot of people would prefer to directly donate or donate their time.
Well, that's a good point.
Perfect. Direct donate as needed. That's probably, I think you're right, Sonny.
Rick, it sets a dangerous precedent, though, because this race to the bottom, I mean, eventually we're all going to have to face the Binance monsters and Coinbase monsters and all these pools that may just do 0% fee or 0.01% fee. They don't really care. So, but if they're controlling a majority of the ADA and people are voting with their ADA to support these behemoth pools that are obviously producing returns for them, but the actual stake pool operator doesn't really care about the returns, these are not the pools that are going to be furthering the goals of the community. Like the people out here that have a vested interest that may have a higher economic incentive to run pools are going to be the ones that want to do these tertiary projects. Binance is not going to do a project to advance ADA. They're just going to delegate people's stake. Same for Coinbase. Same for a lot of these small pools or these large pools that are charging small fees. They're pretty much anonymous pools. You don't know who's behind them or anything, and they're just playing the rules of the game. So what do you think about there's a certain quality of supporting members of the community that are actually pushing projects forward? I mean, we have ProleTool.io, which is a great resource, and lots of other projects that may come in the future.
I really hope as a community we can do everything that we can to encourage as much participation as possible. I know I look at networks like the Bitcoin network, etc., and even EOS, and it's like you're an outsider from the very beginning, and you're not going to get in there. Even if you're a bigger player, you're just not going to get in there. It's just way too competitive. You need too many resources, and it's really is exclusionary instead of inclusionary. And I hope long-term Cardano is going to be as inclusive as it can be.
Now, I see this right here, Philippe. So I think the big exchanges are going to be greedy. I think they're going to charge a higher fee, honestly. I can see them going all the way up to 25%. And reason being is because they want to make a profit off of it, all the delegators. And most people who don't know better, they'll just go to these centralized exchanges, they'll leave them on there and not even think about it and still get destroyed with all those fees that they have to pay. So that's just how I see it. It could be wrong. You could be right. They could just charge literally 0%. But as of right now, I see them being greedy.
Well, I had some Tezos, and there's an option in Coinbase, stake your Tezos, and I clicked, let's do that. And I think at that time they were at a significant fee. So I think it was around 25% at that time.
That's correct.
And
yeah.
I think they've reduced it a little bit since then, but I don't think it has been by much. So
yeah, I think they all want to try to make a profit. They might go a little bit lower, but yeah, at the same time, they want to make profit because they don't have anything any interest in. Well, I wouldn't say interest, but
Well, and at the end of the day, there's just a lot of folks that are involved in this that don't fully understand staking. I know with a lot of the folks that I work with, I've explained it 2 or 3 times and they still don't quite understand it. And I think once we get to mainnet and, they can see that, a little more aptly in their wallets and whatnot, maybe it'll start to resonate with them. But outside of that, people just want to, buy their coin and click stake it for me and go on with their life.
I think that right now we're just so early in everything. We don't have all the features built in yet. So people are trying to use stake pools as a means of raising funds to build things for the community. But I think ultimately that's going to go through the voting mechanism and the treasury. And so, if Papa Carp needs to raise some funds to make Pool Tool better, he can just put up a measure on the on the voting mechanism, and we can all vote. Yeah, give him some ADA so he can continue to work on Pool Tool because we all love it. And I don't think that we'll see people charge higher fees to fund those kinds of things. I think instead that they will use the voting and treasury mechanism to raise those funds. And a second point, I think that a lot of people are worried about the big player that doesn't want to make any money off their stake pool. They just want a bunch of stake pools, like the big 0% fee pools and all that everybody's worried about. But I think ultimately, you can't really do anything about that because if we set a minimum fee, then those same actors would just use everything that they brought in. They just do cashback rewards like a lottery or just bonus rewards for everybody who staked it in. They would just use that money to buy delegates. So those entities are going to be there. I think that ideally the protocol creates decentralization, and all it cares about is security. As long as it's decentralized and secure, the protocol doesn't really care what the fees are.
Sonny, I like the way you look at it because you can have 100 pools run by Binance and 100 pools run by 1%. The protocol doesn't care. It's still going to be decentralized, and they don't actually control the ADA.
Right.
That's one thing that people have to really understand. When you delegate to a pool, it has zero control of that ADA. I cannot stop someone from delegating. I cannot get more people to delegate. I have zero power over that ADA. I'm simply, is my node running? Yes or no? Do you like my fees? Yes or no? That's it. That's it.
And even in the hypothetical situation where a pool operator like, Mr. 1%, everybody's favorite bad guy right now, I'm on the 1% pool. If he had, let's say he had 60 pools right now and he had, 6 billion ADA in it and it was half of the network. If he decided to attack the network, everyone could just leave his pool tomorrow and just totally nerf his ability to attack the network.
The pool can't even attack them. They can't even attack it. The ADA that's delegated to a pool cannot be used to attack the network. The person has to have control data, right? Am I reading that wrong? I thought that's...
Well, my understanding would be that because they controlled so much of the network, they were making so many blocks that they could start making fraudulent blocks, and their fraudulent blocks would take over and win all the battles, and their fraudulent record would become the record.
Yeah,
but if they were trying to do that, we could all, people could just delegate away from their pool and totally nerf their ability to do that.
You're right. Yeah, in that case, good point. Thank you, Sonny.
Yeah. And one variable here, for my pool, what I've been trying to do is, just try to build a community pool. A lot of my future delegates are going to be friends, family, other associates, people that are in my circle of life. And, most of those folks are really excited right now about this project and what's going on. And they've all been acquiring ADA. And so I really like that aspect of my pool. I feel like I'm doing it for those guys as much as anything.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks. Well, Philippe, it looks like we're approaching the hour.
Let's go to the Reddit questions. We're going to do a quick run through, speed round for the Reddit questions. We have to make sure we get to them. So, Rick, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm going to start off. We have three Reddit users posted. We got Smoke1182, 090744, and Copace10. Thank you to all three of you for posting questions to our Reddit. We always appreciate our Reddit users. We got the best Redditors out there. Okay, so our first one here was from 090744, and the question is, Jormungandr version 016 update means what for the average ADA holder? It's not an update to the testnet, right? Or could it be? The language needs dumbing down. It's too difficult to understand. So the question here is, what did Jormungandr 0816 mean for the average ADA holder? What did that do?
I think that really there's nothing for the average ADA holder in these incremental updates of Jormungandr at this point. I mean, we're just seeing slight improvements in the network performance, and so you're going to see an overall better performance from the pools as we move forward. But for the average delegator, I don't think that's going to make any difference.
Yeah, just
go on.
As the network stabilizes, as it gets better, things like the wallet are going to operate better when they go to perform operations. All of these things are just going to be smoother and easier to operate. I know some of the other versions of Jormungandr that were backing the wallet were just causing, a lot of pain for the delegators and those trying to manage their wallet and access it. And I know a lot of those guys just gave up, or I would direct them to Yoroi, and Yoroi would time out. And so that's really the benefit that they're going to see. On the back end, we can set our node up and just let it run, because 816 has been extremely stable on my nodes. So
now I like to add this though. So we're not going to see real significant improvements until we get to the mainnet. So like Shawn was saying, all these incremental improvements are very good, but once we get to the mainnet, that's when we start to see the real performance. And that's what we're all anticipating.
Yeah, you mean the Haskell version?
That is correct.
And to add to that, I mean, basically the incremental versions are kind of like a countdown to the mainnet. The higher it goes, the closer we get to mainnet. So.
Yeah. And just to add, if anyone wants to see any of the delegators, every time they release it on their Twitter, you can click it, takes you to the GitHub. You can look at the change log, and all the change log, it's basically giving network improvements. So this is all, you can think of it as the back end stuff for stake pool operators. It really has no bearance on what you're doing with your delegation. And at this point, if you look at the change logs over each iteration, they're becoming smaller and smaller. So that kind of indicates that we're moving closer and closer to mainnet. I feel like the ITN is kind of wrapping up. They're almost complete with it, or they're not going to put too many more resources in it when the Shelley Haskell mainnet is right around the corner.
Yeah, it is wrapping up on the Jormungandr code.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I just kind of feel like we're in limbo. Because I know that, Haskell's just around the corner, and I switched from reading all the change logs in Jormungandr and the code there to now reading all the Cardano node change logs and code. So I'm just trying to transition myself.
I know what you mean. It does feel like in limbo, because I read a post on GitHub on one of the more recent updates that said that we don't need to do anything with this code because we're transitioning to mainnet. And then it was changed. It was really funny. You probably saw it. And they said, well, maybe not. We don't know when, or something like that. So even the engineers who are working on the code don't know when. They don't know when the mainnet. That was the next question I had on my list. When mainnet? I don't know. Whatever. We'll get there.
I say by at least probably around June.
By June.
I'll say when it's done. That's the only thing you can say.
Ryan, I'll make you a bet. 100 ADA, it's done by the end of May. We're on mainnet. You take 100 ADA bet on that? You say June. If it's June, I owe you 100. If it's May, you owe me 100.
Rick, how many of these small bets do you have running right now? I feel like you have a long list.
All right, I'll take you on that bet.
All right, we're down for that, Brian. Me and Brian got that bet.
Hey, I got it. I've
got a lot of them hanging out there. You know what, Philippe? They're not resolved yet.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Let me think about it first. Let me mull on that first.
You don't have to.
That needs to be the first smart contract on the platform, Rick's betting platform, and just put a whole bunch of that in escrow and then just start running it up.
God, you know how much money Pool Tool could make if they had that, those slot battles?
Yeah.
If they went to Japan, like Japan loves to bet, like and said, hey, these slot battles, as soon as it pops up, you have 10 seconds to place your bet on which one's going to win.
Oh, man.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
They would
is
move
genius,
millions of acres.
That is genius.
Yeah.
God.
You know, I love that feature up until the point that I wasn't getting the crown on my pool.
Yeah, that's the bad part. And you know what's interesting with that, Nick, is that Papa Carp recently put a brand new feature on Pool Tool where you select the pools by location, and you can see that the majority of pools winning slot battles are pools that are located in Germany and pools that are running on the Microsoft cloud servers. Those are the dominating pools. Isn't that crazy? But that's why we're doing this test net. That's why we're doing it.
You know, and I would say one of the things that I had to do is I was running nodes on the West Coast, and then I tried some in Texas, and then I finally moved to the East Coast just because, you know, just watching the network traffic, I thought that would be my best opportunity to stay in the United States and actually start getting winning blocks.
Well, you know, that's interesting that you brought that up about the locations grouping them now that you can see that on Pool Tool, because I actually, a few weeks ago, moved Sunny from New York City. I'm on DigitalOcean, from New York City to Amsterdam. And in the period of time that I was in New York City, I went 5 wins and 14 losses on the, 5 wins out of 14 slot battles. So I was 5 for 14, which is around like 35%, a little below, I think. And then in the next 14, I've won 11. So a significant improvement moving to Amsterdam.
There you go.
Now, another interesting thing is that another Wyoming stake pool operator, Bounty, I believe they're running their node in Shoshone, and in Shoshone, Wyoming, which is, you know, centrally located in the United States, and they seem to be doing very well with their pools. So it is interesting to see that. Now, they are backed by what they call the Wyoming Equality Network if they are running it in their school for their project, and that's a very high bandwidth network. So,
okay, yeah. So there are different factors that affect performance: location to other nodes, speed of network. Definitely factors. Philippe, you want to take us on to the next question? Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you answering those.
Okay. This is the next question is from Redditor Copace10. Says, it seems that there are many stake pools not earning many or any rewards. I have settled with Duck and DIGI after trying some smaller pools without any luck. Over the course of one epoch, how many pools typically earn rewards for those who are delegating to them? In the future, in the mainnet, how will this number evolve? Thanks and stay safe.
I don't know, that's a good question. Over the course of an epoch, how many pools typically earn rewards for those who are delegating? It's kind of hard to answer that.
I think it's around 300 pools making blocks every epoch. Epic, I guess. I say epoch, but whatever.
It is. Didn't Old Pa Sync used to run stats on that every day? Now, last I read it was between 277 and 280 pools per day. Is that right?
That's around what I was seeing it at last. I remember that too, yeah.
Yeah. So somewhere near 300. Now, IOHK just released weekly stats this morning, I believe, and there's 16,300 people, 16,000 plus people delegating. It also had the number of active pools, but I can't remember what it was. It was some number similar to that.
Yeah, so essentially a third of the stake pools out there are actually productive.
Yeah.
You know, I think one important thing to think about, like with a proof of stake network, is that as proof of stake compares to proof of work, the stake is analogous to the hash power. And, you know, if you didn't personally have a whole lot of hash power, you know, you wouldn't expect to create a mining pool and have a whole lot of people flood into it and join you to try to make Bitcoins together. So similarly, I think that people who don't have a lot of stake are going to have a hard time attracting enough to make blocks if they can't make blocks out of their own personal stake.
Yeah, and that's where you're going to have smaller pools. Some hang in there and will eventually acquire the stake as others drop out of the race or the game, and that stake migrates to the pools that are still in the game. So this is a long game, right? I think so. What do you guys think? Is it a long game? It's a long game. I'm sorry. That was
Yes, ever since we started, we got about 5 blocks. Ever since we started our stake pool.
Yeah, so you got to be you got to be patient. You either got to be early or patient, but one of the two is going to win, or hopefully.
I definitely
We got
view
lucky.
this as a
or lucky.
yeah. I definitely view this as a long-term approach. Whether I'm investing in ADA, running a stake pool, and all aspects of this. I mean, we're still early days here, and this is a project that doesn't move swiftly, but it moves with a purpose. And for me, originally, why I got back into the blockchain space was to actually develop applications on top of it. Those long-term goals as well. So, I'm looking at least I can see a lot of productivity.
Okay. Excellent. Philippe, do you want me to roll the last questions and then you'll take us out?
Yes, sounds good.
Okay. All right. Now, the last question we touched on early in the episode, but I'm not letting you guys off the hook. You're going to have to answer this question. This is a tough one.
I already know.
Okay. Smoke1182 asked, I would like to know more about ISPPA. Now, you don't, or any other coalition. Some people call them a mafia. Some people call them a cartel. Okay, there are pros and there's cons. What do you guys think? Gloves off. What do you think of ISPPA? Good, bad, indifferent, both. What is it?
I think it's great. I think people working together, especially at this stage, is great. I think that as long as the network is secure, everything is great. And I don't see any reason to be worried whatsoever about it. I mean, the only reason you would be concerned is that somehow this group might have better performance than your pool. Like, I might be worried that the people in the group are going to perform better than my pool because they've made this network of nodes. But there's nothing stopping me from joining them. And they're not like trying to attack the network. They're just all trying to make sure that their pools operate even better by making sure they have a quality network of nodes that they're connected to. I view it as like a subnet on the whole network. So you have the whole Cardano network, and they're coming together to create a little subnet on that network, because together they will each be able to perform better, in theory, than they can individually. And I don't see any problem with that whatsoever. And I haven't seen any good justification for being upset about it.
Excellent. Thank you. Because this was very controversial on Reddit, but then that's Reddit. You know how Reddit is.
Well, I haven't seen any quantitative advantage either. It's more of an experiment at this time.
I agree.
Yeah.
There you go. Can you expand on that, Nick? What do you mean by that? Is now the time to do it? We're on ITN, right?
Right. I mean, now's the time to explore all of these things. I mean, no stone left unturned. And I think, the more that we hammer out all these details, like running multiple slot leaders, et cetera, that just hardens this network and gets us ready for mainnet. And honestly, I just really hope that we get as many of these issues addressed before mainnet, because, once my family's out on there and they put their hard-earned ADA out on that network, I want it to be solid and I want it to work as advertised. And I don't want them to feel like they've been led down the wrong path by, investing in this and taking their time and effort to be part of the Cardano ecosystem. So, let's do it.
Excellent. Thank you, Nick. Any other comments on the last question? Cartels, mafias, coalitions, whatever you want to call it. Any comments? Any guys good?
I answered this earlier. Yeah, I just answered this earlier, but I'll just caveat on what they just said. Well, I'm indifferent to it personally, but, we're going to have it regardless. Even in the mainnet, we're going to see the same thing. So this is going to happen no matter what people do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it's
no negative.
I think it's fine. I think it's fine. I'm part of it, not electronically, but I'm watching what they're doing, and I'm trying to think, is it doing better or not? Right? So far, it looks about the same.
I'll say that personally, when I moved to Amsterdam, I used the New York City server and created a bunch of passive nodes on it, and I don't feel like that has benefited a whole lot, except for maybe having reliable nodes to bootstrap off of, because sometimes that can be a nightmare. But with the exception of that caveat, I'm not certain that I've really seen much of a benefit. And I even check my logs and see if I'm getting, like the New York City, when Amsterdam makes a block, I'll see if I'm getting a block announcement. And I don't even always get the block announcements from the other servers. So even though they're doing the preferred peers, they're not always sending the block announcements. So I think there's more to the ProleteR rings than we might understand right now.
Yeah, I think they're working. It's just a matter of how many more layers of ProleteR to optimize it, right?
Well, and it's my understanding once we get to Haskell, to the Haskell node, they're not using the ProleteR protocol, if I understand it right. So that's just going to change the game entirely again. And, I believe that's going to be soon.
Yeah, and I don't know what they're using if they're not using a ProleteR type thing, but I don't know. Anyone care to speculate, and we'll wrap it up?
Charles mentioned it in his last update that he did. He was talking about, he mentioned it. So you could watch that and find it in there, but I can't tell you what Charles said,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That's big brain coming down to little brain, and I got it when he said it, but if I say it, it ain't gonna go right.
Yeah, don't worry. It might change before it actually gets implemented. So, although Haskell team's been following the specs, Rust team followed the specs too. They did not get pledge in there. That's the only thing that didn't make it in on the specs. Other than that, Rust team followed the specs. So, I think when it comes to TCP/IP, once the Haskell node comes out, it's going to behave pretty much like the Rust node. Because the TCP/IP has been our biggest problem. We went to incentivized in December, right? Have there been any incentive changes? No. Has there been any network changes? Yes. All of the changes in the code have been on the network side. So when we go to Haskell, the problems we've seen on the Rust side, you'll see them on the Haskell side. Anyone want to take a bet? Got 100. They got another 100 data.
No, I'm with you there. I'm with you there.
Okay.
I'm on your side, Rick.
Okay. I don't need to be an engineer. I don't
think they've shown any of the Haskell Shelley code yet. So, I can't wait to start looking that over.
It's there. 1.9 came out earlier today. But it's not. You can't network it. Well, yeah, you can network. You can. But it's not going to be the same. Not until there has to be ADA on it. There's no test net. So you can set up a node and go, oh, look, there's a node, but it's not really going to do anything. You know what I mean? All right. That was our last one. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Yes. So I'm going to wrap this up because I think we're over our hour. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for spending your time. It's Friday evening here in the States. So depending on where you are, I know someone's in Canada here, but, this was supposed to be an Australian episode, by the way. So we were supposed to have some Australian stake pools. No one showed up, but we encourage anyone that has a stake pool to come on the Cardano Effect podcast, come and talk to us, allow the community members to see your face, see what you stand for, and it's really good advertising as well. So there are a lot of pools out there, and these are the guys you need to follow. So I want to thank Nick, Bryan, Sonny, Shawn, Phillip, and JT for coming on the podcast, and I'm going to leave the last words to you so each and every one of you can say something to the listeners and viewers of the Cardano Effect podcast. What would you like to say? Closing thoughts. Nick, we can start with you.
Hey, I just want to thank everybody that's part of this community in building such, I think, something that's going to be life-changing for a lot of people. This is a big project. It's in its infancy, and I can't wait to see how it starts to change people's lives day to day in the future. So I just thank you guys as well for all the hard work that you guys put into this podcast and into the community.
Thanks, Nick. Bryan?
Well, first, I'd like to thank Rick and Philippe for, inviting us to the podcast. I really appreciate it. And I really think that Cardano and cryptocurrency will be the future, because looking at everything from, I just bought a car, 2 years ago, and I noticed I didn't see a CD player. We went from a tape deck to a CD player. Now we don't hardly have any CDs in these cars, so everything going, pretty much streaming. So I really think that money will eventually, be digital. So I think that Cardano will be the one that lead the way. So I appreciate the opportunity and thank you.
Awesome. Phillip, let's get your team on first.
All right, so I feel like this is very historic right now. Like like 5 years from now, people are going to be looking back at the Cardano effect. They're going to look at these old episodes, and they're going to just see a piece of history right here. Like, we are paving away a foundation for a new world order, a currency that's going to be utilized globally. That's what's going to happen. I see that. I see that Cardano is going to be utilized in the medical industry, possibly with voting, if it succeeds, which I think it might. And this is going to be very historic. That's all I can say about that. And yes, delegate to Wagyu Stake Pool.
No, I forgot about that.
JT?
This has been interesting. I've never done a podcast before or really gone online at all. Delegate to Wagyu Stake Pool, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. Shawn?
Yeah, thanks for doing this. And I really am all in on the vision of Cardano in the future. I think that we have a great community, and it's just going to keep growing as especially through this year as the technology finally is realized and we can all start to play with it and see it for real and what's going to happen. And yep, please delegate to SQUID Pool. Thanks.
Okay. And Sunny?
Yeah, I just first want to say thank you to everyone who's delegating to my pool. You know, the amount of support that I've seen from the community has just been really humbling and exciting. And then also, I just want to say thank you to the community. Everybody in this community is what makes the community great. And I couldn't have got my pool set up without the other members of the community. And, you know, so I just want to say thank you to all of them. And then the last thing is just I want to say congratulations to everyone, because I agree with Philip. I think that we are all part of something that is truly amazing, and we are involved so early that this is going to be something that everybody looks back on and is like, just wow. It's just I think it's going to be amazing. So, you know, I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you again to everyone. We're going to have the links. We're going to have all the stake pool tickers down below, so you can make sure you put them on your watch list. And we appreciate the time that you spent with us today. Please join us again in the future. And until the next episode of the Cardano Effect, bye everyone.